Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. Private investigators of Reddit. What's the strangest case you've ever worked on? Please remember to like, share, hype, and subscribe. I was a PI for 5 years. In my experience, the majority of the industry is insurance investigations. So I suppose one of the most disturbing things I discovered was just how much money insurance companies are willing to spend to get out of paying a small pittance to a claimant. Otherwise, I once worked a domestic, and the subject was an anesthesiologist. This guy was married with 3 kids under 12, but he had a real nasty habit of knocking up nurses. I was hired by one of the nurses, who was concerned that he was cheating on her. She knew that he was married and also had a secret family with another nurse. Anyways, it was pretty shocking to see just how goddamn stupid these educated professionals were. Not a PI, but one time when I was unemployed, a mate did pay me to watch his car one night. He said it always smelt like piss, and he couldn't figure out why. Thought it was worth throwing $50 at me. I sat across from his driveway, and at 3 a.m., a lady walked up to his car. She had this device with suckers on it that she used to pull his window down a little bit. Then she had a spray bottle and spritzed a little pee into his car. Then she just pushed the window back up and walked off. I watched her go into a house down the road a ways and went and woke my mate up. The police came and arrested her, and it turned out there was no reason for it at all. She didn't know him. He didn't know her. There had never been an incident of any kind. She was just doing it because. When I was younger, I was watching this guy once every other week or so for a work comp case, just for some extra cash on top of my regular gig at the time for a PI I know. Dude started his day around 12 in the burbs outside of LA and went to a couple doctor appointments, the gym, Walmart, etc. And then as soon as 5 to 6 p.m. hits, he's out the door of his McMansion to Hood on the other side of town, and long story short, bro was picking up hookers and ostensibly smoking narcotics with them at some seedy Motel 6, Super 8, whatever. This was a regular occurrence for him. The last time I worked this gig, something was amiss because I observed the hooker leave hurriedly with a worried expression on her face in his vehicle about 40 minutes after they checked, and which in and of itself is very unusual, given the situation of my needing to stay incognito to not blow the case and my also wanting to be able to sleep at night. Subject had grown kids, ex-wife. I made the decision to call 911 anonymously to report an unknown medical event in the room. I reasoned that bro either had to be the victim of a crime or unconscious to let a lady of the night leave with his vehicle. 5 minutes later, ambulance, fire, and PD roll up and find dude unconscious from what appeared to be a medical event and cart him off to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that, but I hope he made it out okay. My PI buddy was understanding of the situation and was cool with me not wanting to assist anymore. Father-in-law is one, and sitting near me, so I asked him. He was a cop for 30 years, retired and became a PI for 20 years and retired again. We lived in rural USA. He said he has on 4 occasions found incest relationships in 20 years. Each time, the wife thought the man was cheating. He'd follow them and find the guy going to a hotel or the home of another woman. She'd the pictures to the wife, and she'd say something like, "That's my daughter." But on multiple occasions, he'd see or hear them going at it. He's never told me about these. I wish I didn't ask him. Best story he told me was someone hired him because they thought someone was living in their home. Turns out a friend was pranking them and giving them upper deckers. Ugh. Not a PI, but an attorney who spent a good chunk of his early career doing internal investigations. Was working on a case where we were digging into the special projects division of a large European company. We were looking for reasons to fire an exec within the division, and the branch was HQ'd in a country with labor law protection, so we needed cause to fire the guy. As we were digging into him, we discovered he liked to make PowerPoint presentations of porn that he would send to people through his work email, which led us to discover that he and his wife were swingers, and he was setting up playdates through his work email. Okay, dude was 60 and looked like if a scarecrow became human, so not great, but not the absolute worst image to have in your head. But then we found out the dude had a hardcore clown fetish, and we found all of the orders for outfits and props he liked to dress his wife in. And then we found the dirty talk emails relating to his fetish. And worst of all, this wasn't stuff we could use to get him fired, though we did eventually find the evidence of corruption we were looking for that did work for firing him. Nice job. Actually, you got me out here on a morning trail run, and I forgot to do the videos. I recorded the file, but I make these separately, so this is more a generalization comment, because it's not on one specific story, but I always romanticize the stuff about private investigators. And maybe it's just the old hard-boiled detectives and film noirs I grew up loving, but there's something about it. It's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm sure it's mostly infidelity and insurance stuff, which is what we got a lot of here, but either way, I enjoy the topic, so hope you guys did too. Former PI, mostly fraud stuff. But in the process of one file, I discovered that the subject was cycling through immigrant housekeepers, as he liked to pick them, and then fire them. Had 20 plus voicemails from at least a dozen women, mostly Filipino, that I was able to include in the same report, in the hopes that his wife would eventually see it. Not a PI, but in another life I was offered work by a small firm started by a group of women. They'd just moved into an office and needed IT set up, so I sent some of my guys over. When I went down myself to check in, I got talking with the MD. She asked if I'd help them set up VPNs, fake profiles, fake emails, all that, because apparently their whole business revolved around catching cheating husbands and boyfriends. Turns out there's good money in it. My mother was a PI after she retired from the law. She called me once to ask about one of my neighbors. I couldn't tell her much, but my neighbor seemed nice. The inquiry on my neighbor was part of a background check to work in a brothel. My partner is a PI. I can tell you 2 stories. They're disturbing in that they're sad and scary. 1. Woman's husband died in a workplace accident a few years prior. She's in her 70s. She had managed to find love again, but was totally dependent on her dead husband's payout. If my partner had reported this, she'd have lost her payout. He kept her secret. 2. Man realized my partner was following him. He'd led him down a dirt road in the middle of nowhere that was very hilly. When my partner came over the hill, the man had pulled his truck across the road and was leaning out with a gun. My partner floored it directly at him, and they played the world's most horrifying game of chicken. My partner won. My mom's friend was a PI for years. She was great at it because she just looked like a friendly suburban soccer mom, and no one ever clocked her as being anything else. I asked her this very same question. She said she never saw any one thing that was very disturbing, but every single time she was investigating infidelity, at least one of the partners was cheating. Every single time. I think that really changed her view on romantic relationships. I have a lot of stories from my time as a PI. Disturbing though. If a security guard is the dollar store version of a cop, then a PI, most PIs are dollar store versions of police detectives. So it's not like we're working homicides and SAs. I mean, there are some PIs that do that kind of work, but they're usually few and far between, and in some ways, they get more info because they aren't cops, but they're also stopped from collecting a ton of information because they have no legal authority. What PIs have the cops don't, mostly, is their client's wallet. The PI will investigate as long as the client is willing to pay, and with the limited resources of most police departments and the advent of new crimes always coming in, PIs can uncover things that only come to light due to time and pressure. So, while I'm sure some PIs have had disturbing experiences, I can't say that I as a PI ever saw or experienced anything remotely as disturbing as what I saw in combat. I worked on a workers' comp case for the state that sent a guy to prison for a long time, as he had been working at a local supermarket under the table, and I caught video of him walking down the wheelchair ramp the state built him whilst tossing one of his grandkids up in the air and catching them. Then, I was working a marriage case where a guy in another state, where we were licensed but not operating, hired us to follow his wife. He found chat logs of her courting an old ex on their computer and suspected her trip home to visit family was going to lead to her hooking up with her ex. He was very right, which wasn't all that surprising. Worked a lot of cases like that. What was surprising was when, after the wife spent the night at her ex's house, they left early on a Sunday morning. I assumed they were headed to breakfast, but I lost them near a Firehouse intersection and broke many a speed limit trying to pick them up again, but they had simply vanished. I went back to the intersection and did some actual investigating, and with the moves that I had pulled, I concluded that there was no way they went down any of those possible streets the intersection led to. They had to be close by, and they weren't at the Firehouse. So I looked around, and the only other thing in the area was a well-hidden entry to a cemetery, and that's where I found and recorded them, crying and hugging as they cleaned the guy's dead wife's grave as he introduced her to his new, but still married to my client with kids, girlfriend. A little surprising and certainly action-packed, but not what I would call disturbing. And I've got many more, but most of the jobs I specialized in were going to town halls to do asset investigation. There were a lot of cheating wives and husband cases, and since we worked for the state investigating workers' compensation fraud, a fair amount of uncovered fraud as well. Nothing that I would call disturbing personally, though. I was never a PI, but a PI called me for IT work. I was only 16 or 17 at the time. I show up and the FBI is there. The PI had a partner that was out of town but had used the computer for CP. The FBI agent had me go through the AOL.com account, showing him who sent emails to who, images, etc. The entire time, I'm telling him he should just pack up this computer and bring it to their office for their people to work with. He insisted. Many months later, they were trying to get in contact with me to testify, but before I had to partner took a deal of some sort. I know it seems insane, but this was around 1996. Not a PI, but I work in residential management. I got let go several years back because a resident started insisting that I was stalking them and that I had hired someone to follow them around town. It got to the point where the resident was contacting corporate and threatening legal action. My company let me go, and I shit you not, a day later one of my old coworkers texted me to tell me that they just wheeled the resident away on a gurney as he was screaming throughout the hallways. Apparently, he had a pretty severe case of schizophrenia, and the person he thought I had hired to follow him around was actually his caretaker this whole time. I didn't get my job back, but I thought it was hilarious that I lost my job over a complete psycho. I had a friend who was an orthopedic doctor. He actually quit doing surgery because he made much more money working for insurance companies, giving his professional opinion on whether or not someone was faking a disability. He told me most of it was done in less than 5 minutes, too. He said people would come in limping, holding their back, sore, too hurt to work, etc. He would put them in an exam room and tell them to take off their shirt and put on the hospital gown and sit on the exam table. People who thought they weren't being watched would do that effortlessly, then be all in pain and disabled after. Not a PI, but my dad had a stint as an insurance adjuster a few decades back. He mostly did health and life insurance claims, and his assigned area was in a really rough section of a large city. His last assigned claim was a workplace death. A sanitation worker had been crushed to death when a garbage truck dumped its load on him at the landfill. Toxicology report came back that he was drunk. My dad went to talk to the man's widow to discuss her payout. She told him she didn't want the money, because someone murdered her husband. According to her, the husband never touched alcohol, so it was impossible for him to be drunk on the job. She begged my dad to look harder into the case. So we did. And he found several inconsistencies and issues that made the incident look increasingly suspicious. And the more questions he asked, the more everyone involved got hostile with him. Eventually, when he was due to submit his report, his boss took him to a deserted floor of the building, into a little back office, and demanded that he just issue the payout check to the widow and confirm the death was accidental. He made several veiled threats and implied that my dad was pissing off the wrong people. Fortunately, my dad had seen this coming and already filed his report before the meeting with another supervisor who was all too happy to file it and get the ball rolling on a proper murder investigation. My dad quit the company immediately after this. As far as I know, several people went down for the guy's murder, including the initial cop who'd handled the case and the landfill owner. As it turned out, the poor guy had accidentally seen something he wasn't supposed to see and was silenced permanently for it. My dad didn't outright confirm that this wasn't why he promptly joined the military and moved across the country with the family, swearing it was mainly because of a state hiring freeze for the job he wanted, but did admit it may have played a factor. Last year, I was 17. I presented and pretended to be a private investigator just for fun, and my neighbor gave me a tenner to go look for his missing cat. I guess he just wanted me to have some fun, and I was just fooling around, and I was pretty sure I wouldn't find anything, but damn, did I find something. At the bottom of my street, there was an old abandoned retirement home, closed a couple years after I moved in. I went there first and found a blood trail leading into the place. There wasn't a lot of blood, but just enough that it could have been the cat's blood. Case in point, the building was being used by some druggies that were hiding their operation. Just some weed, meth, and coke, and a couple of guns. After seeming that, I shat myself because I was only going in the whole PI thing as a joke. I anonymously tipped off the police, who raided the place. Apparently, one of the guys accidentally attacked the cat, who started to wail loudly, and he was scared people would come to investigate. He couldn't bring himself to kill the cat, so he dragged it inside and forgot to clean the blood away. It was one of the most thrilling yet terrifying things that I'd ever gotten myself into, but hey, at least the cat lived, and my neighbor got her back. I actually have something for this. I don't have any license, but I work in a PI office. I'm the only administrative staff member. It's basically me and my Vietnam vet boss in a Ron Swanson, April Ludgate kind of situation. A story he told me recently comes to mind. He and his partner were once hired to sweep a house and look for any valuables. They agreed to the case before knowing the full extent of the damage to the home because the lawyers were willing to pay well, and our caseload was small at the time. The home was owned by a man who inherited a large fortune because his father had invented a little movie that went on to become one of the biggest horror franchises of all time. The son never worked a day in his life. He had a big mansion out in the boonies. No one ever saw him or his wife because they spent all of their time inside. Their home was now empty because he went nuts and murdered his wife and their dog. He was serving life in prison, and the family's estate needed the home cleared. When my boss and his partner got in there, they realized how bad it was. For years, this guy and his wife had been shooting up drugs in the house. Every square inch of the mansion was covered in trash. After bringing on drugs and alcohol, the two would puke and then just cover the vomit with trash and leave it there. The same went for the dog shit and piss. This went on for years. In addition to the puke and animal waste, there were needles littered throughout the trash. My boss had to buy hazmat suits to sweep the home and look for valuables. Apparently, there was a ton of diamond and gold jewelry just thrown right in with the filth. At one point, they found a table behind a door that was missed by the forensic crew, completely covered in the wife's blood from where he had mutilated the body. They also found an entire room full of many thousands dollars kiln and ceramic supplies, all untouched. I guess this guy decided he wanted to become a master potter before quickly abandoning that pursuit to become a murderer. They could only access the home through one exterior door that was blocked. When they eventually walked around the exterior of the home, they found that the guy had purchased himself a shark cage, as in, he decided he wanted to become a shark photographer, and, ignoring the fact that he didn't live right on the ocean, bought a shark cage and stuck it in the yard. Eventually, people started to invade the grounds and steal stuff from the home, and one day, the shark cage just disappeared. This is the first one that came to mind because it just escalated so much as he relayed the story to me. It's hard for me to tell a lot of these stories because of our confidentiality policy, but if I think of any more I can tell, I'll edit. My boss has other crazy stories, from working private security for Paris Hilton, Snoop Dogg, and the Girls Gone Wild guy. And we have a few instances of having to serve papers to crazy people. This job is never boring. I'm a paralegal who investigates backgrounds of witnesses for our cases. I found someone who was pretending to be someone else who died as a kid. My boss alerted the feds, and they investigated and found out he had faked his death 20 years before to avoid an embezzlement trial. He got convicted for the false identity because he filed taxes in a fake name. Not sure about the original embezzlement charge. He was a witness in a financial case involving the SEC, by the way. I was shooting heroin and reading The Fountainhead in the front seat of a privately owned police cruiser when a call came in. I put a quarter in the radio to activate it. It was the chief. "Bad news, detective. We got a situation." "What? Is the mayor trying to ban trans fats again?" "Worse. Somebody just stole $447 million worth of Bitcoin. The heroin needle practically fell out of my arm." "What kind of monster would do something like that?" "Bitcoins are the ultimate currency, virtual, anonymous, stateless. They represent true economic freedom, not subject to arbitrary manipulation by any government. Do we have any leads? Not yet. But mark my words, we're going to figure out who did this, and we're going to take them down, provided someone pays us fair market rate to do so." "Easy, Chief," I said. "Any rate, the market offer is, by definition, fair." He laughed. "That's why you're the best I got, Lasowski. Now, you get out there and find those Bitcoins." "Don't worry," I said, "I'm on it." I put a quarter in the siren. 10 minutes later, I was on the scene. It was a normal office building, strangled on all sides by public sidewalks. I hopped over them and went inside. "Home Depot presents the police," I said, flashing my badge and my gun and a small picture of Ron Paul. "Nobody move unless you want to." They didn't. "Now, which one of you punks is going to pay me to investigate this crime?" No one spoke up. "Come on," I said. "Don't you all understand that the protection of private property is the foundation of all personal liberty?" It didn't seem like they did. "Seriously, guys, without a strong economic motivator, I'm just going to stand here and not solve this case. Cash is fine, but I prefer being paid in gold bullion or autographed Penn Gillette posters." Nothing. These people were stonewalling me. It almost seemed like they didn't care that a fortune in company money invented to buy drugs was missing. I figured I could wait them out. I lit several cigarettes indoors. A pregnant lady coughed, and I told her that secondhand smoke is a myth. Just then, a man in glasses made a break for it. "Subway, eat fresh and freeze, scumbag," I yelled. Too late. He was already out the front door. I went after him. "Stop right there," I yelled as I ran. He was faster than me because I always try to avoid stepping on public sidewalks. Our country needs a private sidewalk voucher system, but thanks to the incestuous interplay between our corrupt federal government and the public sidewalk lobby, it'll never happen. I was losing them. "Listen, I'll pay you to stop," I yelled. "What would you consider an appropriate price point for stopping? I'll offer you a 1/13 of an ounce of gold and a gently worn Bob Barr 08 extra large long-sleeved men's t-shirt." He turned. In his hand was a revolver that the Constitution said he had every right to own. He fired at me and missed. I pulled my own gun, put a quarter in it, and fired back. The bullet lodged in a U.S. Postal Service mailbox less than a foot from his head. I shot the mailbox again on purpose. All right, the man yelled, throwing down his weapon. I give up, cop. I confess. I took the bitcoins. Why'd you do it? I asked, as I slapped a pair of Oikos Greek Yogurt Presents handcuffs on the guy. Because I was afraid. Afraid of an economic future, free from the pernicious meddling of central bankers, he said. I'm a central banker. I wanted to cold cock the guy. Years ago, a central banker killed my partner. Instead, I shook my head. Let this be a message to all you central banker friends out on the street. I said, no matter how many bitcoins you steal, you'll never take away the dream of an open society based on the principles of personal, economic freedom. He nodded, because he knew I was right. Then he swiped his credit card to pay me for arresting him.